Other callers on the call.
Hello?
Good morning, this is Matt.
Hi, Matt. It's Patrick again. How are you?
Patrick, I'm doing well, man. It's Friday.
Yeah, it's starting to get through the week, like every week. So,
Have a good Valentine's Day?
yeah, spent in the office. It was pretty good. So, how about yourself?
It was normal. My wife and I, we just trade cards, so it wasn't really anything big.
Yeah. So, are we waiting on anyone else on your end as well?
No, not on my end.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're waiting on one on mine, so I'm gonna give him a few minutes. So,
Okay, all right. Now remind me again where you guys are.
we're in San Diego. I don't know if you know the area or not, La Jolla specifically.
Okay, no, I've actually never been to San Diego.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to think. You guys are in Atlanta, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've been no. Actually, I had a bachelor party last year. I suppose in Savannah and Atlanta. So I don't
No
remember.
kidding.
Don't remember too much of that, but I know I was in the area. So
So you came into Atlanta for the bachelor party too?
yeah. Well, as far as I remember, we flew into Savannah. Atlanta's about 4 hours away. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, we flew into Savannah. I remember it was the smallest plane I think I've ever been on. It was a very locked out airport, and then we drove. Yeah, and then we ended out in Atlanta for the time. So that was last year. It was about 95. I'm guessing it was around July. So
Yeah, it gets pretty hot in the summertime.
yeah, for sure.
Where'd you guys go? A couple strip clubs?
Not strip clubs, no. In my these days, guys are classing it out. People are not letting them, but a few clubs, quite a few clubs. We didn't go to any strip clubs, but yeah, it was a wild time. I forget. Well, I'm sure you probably know better than me what it's called, the strip area in Savannah, what the core bar area is near the water.
In Savannah? Well, to be honest, I've only been down to Savannah a couple times, and I don't quite remember it. So,
Yeah, all right. So that's good. How's the weather this time of year for you guys?
it's not too bad. I mean, I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so I'm used to really cold weather. But in terms of here in Atlanta, it's probably like 45, 50 degrees right now.
Mm-hmm.
Back home in Pennsylvania, it's like 10 degrees, and they just got like 2 feet of snow. So,
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Michigan, so everything you said in Pennsylvania times that a little bit worse. So I definitely appreciate my change of venue now. So yeah, I would say it's probably a 60s now here. I mean, obviously it's not too cold anytime either place we're at. But
right. What brought you to San Diego?
about 50% business related, 50% weather related, I'd say. So we wanted
Okay.
to we wanted to locate and be near the Silicon Valley area for our industry, and we had a lot of business contacts in LA and didn't want to dive directly into either of them because we had a lot of competition for tech talent in Silicon Valley. So we kind of tried out offices in both locations for a couple months, then decided on the South. So
I gotcha. I gotcha.
so last we had, I'm not even gonna wait on anyone on my end. I'm not sure if Inat is coming or not, but I'm going to jump right in. I haven't opened up the go-to meeting yet because last we left off, I believe this was to take a closer look on your end, correct? We gave you
Yeah.
the generalized overview, and this was to take a closer look on basically what you wanted to know on at this time.
Yes. So let me give you a little update. This morning, so as I mentioned last time, we're going through kind of this digital revolution.
Mm-hmm.
That I've got to come up with a clever code name going forward, like Operation Rebirth or something. But essentially, it's AmericasMart's digital progress initiative in terms of responsive website development and multi-platform communications, where we are looking to go to redo our entire site. We've viewed it internally, we've determined that it's hard to navigate, that we can display the information a lot better, and so the next step for us is to go through the obvious research phases. And in the PowerPoint deck that I just delivered that's going to our CEO today, I'm outlining several research methodologies to figure all of that out. Obviously, we're going to use our Google Analytics from a numerical statistics standpoint, since we're already using it right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to use one-on-one interviews, face-to-face interviews, field studies to figure out what people are doing. Obviously, we're going to do surveys for broad-based, if we could send out hundreds and broad-based questions and answers. And what really gets interesting is the possibility of using applications like yours to visually capture through video problem areas that we're having and combine that with the numerical statistics that also is intertwined with the application as well. And then we'll combine that with usability testing centers and focus groups on our end to kind of complete the final research phases. So when I met with my SVP, I had initial approval to take this one step further to ascertain the exact amount that it's going to cost to house an application like this.
Okay. No problem. I just want to mention, I suppose, one point of all the points you brought up beforehand. When I hadn't mentioned, we showed, I believe, usually in an intro about two or three different modules. On the feedback survey end, we have built-in capabilities to deploy surveys that your company chooses, based essentially the questions, to deploy them on any scenario, such as if someone struggles on your site, let's say a practical scenario of someone struggles and you see they visited 4 times and they haven't concluded the objective that you think they should conclude. If someone goes to this page, here's what we expect them to do. You can dynamically have surveys pop up for those individualized clients, referencing their satisfaction levels, and then we have a few default questions, but you guys can choose the rest, and those can be deployed on only individual pain point clients as well. So that's just, I thought, a relevant supplement in addition, of course, to the data to potentially try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone on your end. So
that's definitely interesting. I definitely see a use for this in 1 or 2 phases, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to get approval for, quite honestly. One is putting up this application up front so we can start collecting data right away. The other option is to, once we complete phase 1, which is the complete visual overhaul of the website, implement a application just like this to gear us ready up for phase 2, which is the data component, and that's more the lead scoring and the lead nurturing aspect of the project. And I'm not exactly sure where this app would fit best. Should we put it up front and use it to start collecting data about what's going on, or do we use our already in place numerical tools to make those assumptions and then go from there, and then use this program to justify what we've done, but test and gear up for the second phase?
Yeah, that's obviously a question internally, depending on how mirrored you guys are to your current numerical system. But I would say the usual scope I would take is, if you have, like you said, if you know you guys already aren't perfect and you have a pretty general idea of problem areas that need fixing, what we'd usually recommend is we actually do it internally as a service as well, is watch. I try to tell everyone to watch at least a few videos of your pain points, because there's going to be a few responsive design type things you're not going to pick up through the data. You're going to figure out random elements that are going to load one way or the other. Hey, I didn't notice my designer was using a 1280 by 740 screen. I didn't realize how much traffic we have in this. So we would encourage, not to look at 1,000, but to look at 10 or 20 pain point scenarios before trying to focus on one particular objective. Once that objective is focused on our end, of course, the data, because we have all this data to supplement all the videos you see, you can take a much finer comb to, aside from watching what happened with our application, to do calculations to, I guess, just address that pain point deeper. Because, so that's the usual process we would go through with someone. But usually everyone has their primary calls to action on a website that they're taking a close look at. in your guys' case, if you're overhauling everything, that's not as traditionalized, but that's just the usual premise. But of course, that's up to what you guys are looking for. So.
Right. I mean, in terms of objectives, they're fairly clear. So let me take a step back. I mean, the overall objective is to deploy, release, and develop an application. So what you're seeing right now, what you have up on the screen is obviously our website. Mm-hmm. This website is not responsive in nature. Mm-hmm. It doesn't function. It wasn't developed with responsive design and even thinking about responsive design 2 years ago. When we first launched it, people didn't realize that the Buyer's Resource Center, below the primary navigation, those gray buttons above the moving slider, they didn't know that that was navigation. And we found that out through the numerical data that we currently have. In terms of design consistency, we see real big problems with this. So we're rolling this out not just as a updated website, but as a reimagination of what we could do with digital. We're a complex with 7.5 million square feet, comprising 3 separate skyscrapers here in Atlanta that are all connected via tunnels and bridges. So you can very easily go from building 1 to building 2 to building 3. And I think it's roughly about 90 stories of skyscraper space over the 3 buildings. That being said, coming in January, we will have launched and released Wi-Fi in every nook and corner of this place, which is tremendous because this place is all concrete. It's hard to get Wi-Fi. So we've spent probably about $5 million in Wi-Fi infrastructure. And then coming in January, we'll be releasing a mobile app. And the idea is to, there are 3 goals in place: a web reimagination where we're inviting buyers to explore the possibilities, a app development and deployment which will let buyers experience the excitement of this place, and finally video expansion where we're immersing buyers in the entire brand. So what we're trying to do is really overhaul not just the website but everything that touches the digital world and bring them together in one unified objective. So, I mean, we have clear goals in mind. It's a matter of pinpointing those pain points, as you mentioned.
Okay. No, yeah. I mean, you guys are obviously heading in the right direction. Like you said, you said you had been recently brought on. Is that correct, or was that recent?
Yeah,
as of a couple years?
A year and a half now.
Year and a half now. Okay. Yeah. So you guys obviously have a firm plan in place, and the hardware is the step one before worrying about all of the digital, like you said. So there are hard costs on our end. So we had left off last time, and I mentioned that we have to run basically a load test to get a precise estimate on a monthly variable. And I told you, I prefaced 5K for 1 million monthly page views. That was a ballpark estimate that we're at after that test. We had brought that up. I told you the implementation time, I believe, is between 3 weeks and 8 weeks, depending on circumstance. A larger organization, you guys, I would probably say 5 to 6 would be realistic. And the other option we have there, we concluded referencing, we have a 3-month pilot option, which, to be honest, a lot of companies are using, particularly ones with extremely high traffic who don't want to replace other tools until they get a feel for ours. And the way that would work is we would take a look at I believe our maximum would be 100K monthly page views for the amount that we would allow on your end. And if your site goes above there, you would put that on particular sections of your website. We would charge you a fixed rate up front with only a 500-month variable for 3 months. And that amount would be $8,000, assuming that there's nothing crazy happening on your site. That's the usual agreement we have to move forward. So that would be kind of the step one. The implementation process there would work. You would add a piece of code onto a particular portion of your website that you want for this pilot. At that time, our implementation, it wouldn't affect your website. We would do it on a testing server, but we would set everything up in the, like we said, 5 to 6 week range. After that, you would have access to that data for 3 months. Then we would take a hard stop and decide if you would want a complete implementation. So that would be, I think, the numbers and answers you're looking for. So.
Yeah, let me ask you, are people typically, I mean, that trial method's definitely good. Obviously, we're talking a large investment for a lot of these companies. You said we're right in the middle in terms of the size of the organization that are utilizing your services. Are companies typically doing that 3-month trial and figuring out what their pain points are, and then they figure that out, and then they don't go the next step to the full contract, or are they typically converting?
They're converting. The issue here is a lot of them are very afraid that a lot of times the fancier a tool looks, the less usable it's going to be. So we have a lot of people who have had pain points with other programs who basically say, I've gotten burnt 2 or 3 times because we're not able to use something. So we take our time. I'll mention, I hadn't mentioned, I mean, by default, we throw in 10 hours servicing wise over that time period as well. And we just make sure you know what you're doing. That's all it comes down to. And it wouldn't necessarily be you. We spoke. You have a high level experience with these kind of products, but other people in your organization who said, okay, what can this actually show me? So that's
Right.
usually, that's the typical scenario in our end. But of course, from a contractual perspective, if you wanted to cut ties at that point on both ends, it's not going to have any kind of effect. And if you want to take the next step, it would also remove the R&D needed to do a implementation on your entire structure. So
I got it. Okay. I kind of want to take this one step further and figure out and pinpoint the exact amount that we would be looking at in terms of price, either both for the full permanent contract or the trial version. And from my understanding, please do correct me if I'm wrong, that the way to do that is to put some code on our website, sign some NDAs, and move forward for what, 1 day, 2 days?
1 day should be more than enough. 1 day should be enough. The only scenario, I don't have this in front of me, but my integration specialist would ask is if you're a site that gets over 10 times as much traffic in a particular period of year for, a significant amount of time, that's just the one thing are you guys that seasonable? Are you guys that seasonal with your interest, or how does your, I wouldn't think so with your product. It comes down to people who are launching for a particular event, That's the only other thing we need to know internally. So.
Yeah, that's a terrific question, and one that I was definitely going to bring in. We're not seasonal in the fact that, we may pick up in January or over a particular holiday like Christmas, but we run 15 shows a year, but there are 2 big ones in particular, one in January and one in July. And we'll typically, for those 2 shows, we'll have about 50,000 people here in the building, opposed to some of the smaller shows that we do throughout the year. Well, we may only have 15,000. So traffic to the all digital properties definitely increases during that period.
Okay, yeah, and I'm to be honest, yeah, I'm not the one to address that. I'll have an integration specialist chat with you, but it just, the only scenarios we're looking to avoid is we had someone who told us, their traffic to basically not have our application ready for a certain number, and then we had 300 times the traffic the next week, and they were very aware that was happening. So those are the only scenarios, So it's not, obviously everyone's traffic goes up and down. So on your end, would you like, so as you said, the next step on that end would be to send an NDA both ways, and then after that we would be able to send you a piece of code and just cut straight to it, add it on a segment of your website for a day, and after that be able to give you firm estimates and lay out the 2 options clearly in documentation between the pilot option and the...
That actually sounds fantastic, and the reason for the rush is because I'm trying to ascertain how much money I need to budget for this entire development of this whole new digital ecosystem. So by having a clear-cut understanding of how much this program is actually going to cost will give me a little bit more ammunition in terms of when I go into the budget meetings.
Yeah, no problem. Remind me, did you have more domains than AmericasMart.com? Did you guys have a few different domains, or is this your primary?
We do. We have, there's about 5 separate divisions that are under the AmericasMart brand. But in terms of this implementation, probably AmericasMart.com would be the only implementation that we would worry about at this point.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was all I was going to bring up is things we do it per domain. So, Yeah, so I think we have it outlined. Anything different from what I said? So I'll send you what we said. NDAs first. Once we have them exchanged, we would send you a snippet of code, and I would pass you along to my implementation team and go from there.
Yes, and just confirming, obviously once we sign the NDAs, all information that is collected is highly contained within your system, within your servers?
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Okay.
That's yeah. You know, you're not going to get anything outside of there, and we also have the ability to, when we do implementation, not on the pilot, but for the full implementation, we can encrypt data as an intermediary between our organization and yours. Typically, we'll only do that for very, social securities with particular companies or financial information where they want it stored. We can't look at it, so we do have that capability on any particularly sensitive data. That's only for the time that we're setting up, basically. So.
Right, and does that? I don't know if we would. I don't know if our data is that secret, but I'm curious at this point. Would there be an extra charge at that point?
I don't think so. Once again, I'm not the person doing this. I'm pretty sure that's not an extra charge. But I will say that in all reality, that's usually for Social Security number financial data. Aside from that, we're not going to share the data. That's just to say, oh, you guys can't even skim anything while you're setting it up on the tech end, so.
Right. No, I mean, I understand. The only reason I mention it is because our CEO is desperately set against sharing of any information. And to share information, I have to go through a whole series of internal things. Quite frankly, it's a little ridiculous, but for this particular instance, I'm not even going to mention it to him.
All right, that's probably best. Yeah, so practically now, of course, no information is going to be out there in these cases, and if there's a no at the end of that hard 3 months, the data is done. We actually have documentation on both ends. We kind of re-sign to say that, the data is not being stored on our end. It's basically done. So we can export that to you guys in XML format to do as you please, but we're, it's not going to be floating around for us to reference. So.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Matt, I guess, yeah, it's pretty clear cut our next step in that case. I'll have that to you most likely on Monday. And any other questions, I'll leave my personal number in the email. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
That sounds great. I appreciate this, Patrick. This is a good call.
Thanks, Matt. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, man. See you Monday.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.